Thank you, Miss Deb. Hello, Becky. Good morning. I'm having an okay morning. An okay morning. I just got all choked up in my live over there. Hi, Jacob. Hiya, Laurel. I'm redoing this head. Hello, Ruby. We'll give everybody a chance to get here. Wait a few minutes because we don't want to start story time without everybody else. Hi, Cats Are Fancy. I am okay. Good morning. I'm trying to get my camera level there. You're going out to breakfast later this morning. Oh, that sounds like fun. Good afternoon. I don't like to go out to breakfast so much anymore because I find the food and everything is the cheap stuff that I don't like to buy in the grocery store. But going out to breakfast is a lot of fun. It's been a long time since I went out to, actually, it's been a year since I went out to breakfast. And it was Denny's, and I didn't really eat. Okay. Yeah, the last time I went out to breakfast it was a Denny's in Las Vegas. And it ended up costing me a $10 tip. And I didn't even like the food. It really is. It's there's so much of it. It's crazy. That's why I thought that locks would be good, is because my hair is thin, but there's a lot of it. So if it's not locked up, it's real flat. Oh, similar to IHOP, only better. So it's a mom and pop place that's better than, it's not a chain. You're going to get much better food if you just go to a mom and pop place than you are. Mom and pop places are always worth the extra money they charge because they're not fast food bought food. Their food is bought more. They don't have a chain to produce food for you, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to shut up now. How's everybody doing? Did everybody have fun last night on Halloween? Oh, and that full moon, wasn't that something? Holy cow. For the full moon to come this year. You lived in Las Vegas when you were a kid, really? Right, Jellin Glean? I don't know of a place like that here. Everything is so expensive here. Real estate and to rent a place for business is so expensive in a resort town that it's impossible for a mom and pop place to stay afloat. That moon was beautiful. I didn't see it until this morning because I was asleep before it rose. Yes, blue moon, I saw you standing alone. Yeah, that's all we have too is IHOP. We have an IHOP. We have all the chain places that are. Yeah, you should have gotten out to see the full moon. The full moon was really pretty. Blue moon, I saw you standing alone. I wish I knew the words to that song. Without a care on my own. Anyway. So it is 5 minutes in, so I think it's time to start story time. Would you guys want to hear the serial killer part of the story over again, or do you want me to continue on in the story for the summer of 77? When we let off, I had just gotten to Wichita Falls, Texas, and showed up at my older brother's house. My older brother, as it turns out, was not a good person for a young teenager to go live with. He had very little tolerance for how wild I was because I really hadn't ever been raised, you know. I never was raised. I just existed and did what I wanted and asked for stories. The Texas story. Okay, so anyway, he as it turned out I didn't know what to expect from him. He was always the party guy in my life. Well, it turns out the party guy, when he's got a full-time job and has to pay rent, is not a party guy anymore. Even though he partied with us as soon as we got there and hit on my girlfriend, who was a minor and 15 years old, and the party guy was just a party guy. Or I think anyway. So, he was responsible. And I was irresponsible because I was so young. And then after I got a job right away and was working at a Dunkin' Donuts, and they introduced me to one of their girlfriends. Both my brothers lived in Wichita Falls, and they were young, in their early 20s. I was 15. And so they introduced me to a mutual girlfriend that they had shared, and I got a job at Dunkin' Donuts where she worked. But as it turns out, that girlfriend was a kleptomaniac who stole nonstop from everybody around her. She stole everything. She stole money from the Dunkin' Donuts and got me fired. We got a job in the next place we got a job. She stole money from the register there and got me fired because we got hired at the same time. She and I had an apartment, and I had to leave it because she wasn't paying the rent. And I went to my brother Jim's house, and Jim and Troy were mad at me because when I was hitchhiking across country, I had called third party and charged the calls. And people started realizing that they had fraudulent charges on their phone bills from when I was making my way across country. Remember, I told you that I would look in the phone book and get a name and address and call the operator and say, I need to make a long distance call, and bill it to my home number. And so I didn't realize that they would ever catch me or do anything about it. 15-year-old me didn't think of that. I just needed to make a call. And so those charges started coming into his bill because his number was the one I was calling. I was calling his number, so they started adding those charges to his bill. So he was mad at me for that. And I didn't keep making calls on his phone. I just made a bunch of calls when I was traveling across country, and he was mad at me. In addition to that, why else? Oh, I went to his apartment one time, and I opened the door and walked through to see if he was there, and he wasn't there, and I left. But I had the kleptomaniac with me, and he had left money on his dresser for one of his bills next to laying on the envelope, laying on the bill. And she stole the money when we walked through. So he blamed me for that as well. I was the one who stole his money. I'm the one who charged up his phone. So when she and I had a falling out because she wasn't paying her rent, and I went to them for help because I didn't have any place to go, my brother Jim and my brother Troy got me stoned, 15 years old, in Wichita Falls. Actually, by then I'd had a birthday, so I was 16. Oh, wow, Miss Deb. So I was 16 years old now. They got me stoned, smoked a joint with me, got me really stoned, and then took me into the alley, took me for a ride in their car. We got into an alley, and they put me out. Said, don't ever come back. Get out and don't ever come back. And I was standing there stoned, out of my mind, because they smoked a joint with me, crying. And they drove around me laughing. So I was on the street. I didn't understand why they were so mad at me, because they were the ones who raised me, and I was only exhibiting behavior that they taught me. They taught me to shoplift in stores. They taught me to sneak around and take things that weren't mine. They taught me to party regardless of responsibility. My brother came. I was staying at my sister's house, and she went on vacation when I was 14. And my brother came and stayed with me for 2 weeks and got me drunk on rum and smoked pot with me and did all kinds of drugs with me because he was AWOL from the Navy. And then when I exhibit that kind of behavior as a young teen, they ostracize me and put me on the street. And this is after I've had the dealing with the serial killer. I've traveled across country. I've had to hitchhike across country, get to his house, and now they put me on the street. And I'm in Wichita Falls, Texas. So I go back to the friend and make friends with the friend that has a car. And she ends up convincing me to leave town because she's upset that her boyfriend, who was a married police officer with a set of twins, her boyfriend. Oh, and when I was in Wichita Falls, the other thing that girlfriend Kim that they set me up with liked to do was date cops. So we would drive around in her car. I am 15 and she is 17. And we are driving around in her car playing tag with the midnight shift cops who take us out on their boat, both of them married, take us on an excursion at the lake in their boat and spend the entire time trying to get in my pants. And I'm telling them no. But these are the cops. My first experience on a personal level with police officers was midnight shift married cops hitting on the homeless girl. Okay? Because she had green eyes and dimples. I mean, so she got upset because her cop boyfriend, I wasn't interested in any of those cops. I was still a virgin and hadn't been in a relationship yet that would lead me into having sex with someone. So I resisted I thought we were just going to the lake to have fun. And we were going to the lake so they could hit on me. So, and that cop that did that to me is now a leader in the Wichita Falls Police Department, okay? I mean, anyway, so she talked me into leaving town because she was upset that the cop that had twins and was married, that would sour anyone with cops, right? I mean, that taught me to not trust them. I mean, I remember them open the glove box in the boat and they had their guns and their badges in there. I mean, so that taught me to not trust cops, that cops are not good people. You know, they're not above, they're above the law. They think they're above the law. Okay. So anyway, she wants to leave town and she's got a friend in Denver, Colorado who is going to let us, he owns a franchise of a Dunkin' Donuts there because remember, that's where we first had a job. He owns a franchise of a Dunkin' Donuts there, and so we're going to go there and get a job at his Dunkin' Donuts, and he'll let us stay in his apartment until we get money and we can get our own apartment. So she talks me into moving there with her. So we wait and get all of our paychecks from the jobs that we'd been working, and we head out to Colorado. And the kleptomaniac stops in Amarillo a guy that she met on a band trip and had sex with is in Amarillo. So we just show up unannounced to his house and he welcomes us to stay. And I get to sit in the other bedroom. He has a spare bedroom and I'm sleeping in his room, and I get to sit in the other bedroom and listen to them all night long. It was just, oh my God. And he tried to invite me into their sexual escapade. And I remember my friend saying, oh God, no, she's the Virgin Mary. She's the Virgin Mary. And so after he left and went to work, I guess she told him we're going to leave this morning. So he left us sleeping and went to work. And when she got up in the morning, she robbed him. She went through all of his closets, took whatever she wanted, went through his kitchen. She fucking robbed him. And then we left. So she got paid for her night in the sack. And I was like, holy shit. You know, holy shit, this girl is bad. But she referred to me as the Virgin Mary. So then we get back on the road and we drive straight through to Denver. She really was. She stole everywhere. She stole everywhere. So we get to Denver, Colorado at about 9 o'clock at night on I don't know, it must have been like a Wednesday night. And we show up at this Dunkin' Donuts, and we're sitting out there having, we ordered something. We're sitting at the Dunkin' Donuts, and she asked to see him. And he comes out and sees her sitting there and is not happy to see her. He did not invite her there. He did not even know she was coming. He tells us, you can come to my house and spend the night, but then you're leaving. You cannot stay here. My girlfriend is coming in for the weekend, and you have to be gone by the time she gets here. And I was appalled, because that's not the situation that she told me we were coming into. And so as we were on our way to his house, actually, he didn't tell us that. He said, follow us. Follow me to my house. And he told us that once we got to his house. He lived in a big apartment complex that you had to walk a long way from the parking lot in order to get to his apartment. When we got into his apartment, he said, you can't stay here because my girlfriend's coming for the weekend. I don't want you here. You can stay the night, but you're not staying here. So we left the apartment to go to the car to get our stuff out of the car. And I told her, I do not want to stay here. He does not want us here. Why are we staying here? He doesn't want us here. And we were at the car, and she said, fine, you stay out here. I'm going back. And she locked her car and went back inside the apartment and left me outside. And I actually, it was dark. I had no idea where the fucking apartment was. So I got a coat hanger through a crack in the window and got the car unlocked. We had a cat with us, believe it or not. She was leaving the cat all night long in her car. So I used a coat hanger and unlocked her car and spent the night in her car. And, let the cat go potty and stuff and spent the night sleeping in the car. In the morning, when I got up, I walked up to the Jack-in-the-Box to use the bathroom. And there was a Jack-in-the-Box in the corner to use the bathroom. And I asked them if they were hiring, and they said yes. And I picked up 2 applications. And then I came back through, and I went to the apartment complex manager's office and told them that I was the name of the guy I was visiting, and that I had walked up to the Jack-in-the-Box, and now I couldn't remember how to get back to his apartment. And you could do that shit in the 70s. Right now, they wouldn't tell you where he lived. But in the 70s, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, hang on a minute. And they looked up his apartment number and showed me on the map how to get to it. And so I walked over to the apartment and knocked on the door. And she came and peeked out the curtains and said, I'm not coming out. And I said, I want to talk to you. I got applications. They're hiring. We can get a job there. We can, She said, I'm not coming out. Get out of here. So I went to her car, and one of the jobs that she and I had gotten together was a stereo shop, a music and stereo shop. It was a really cool place to work. She fucked it up for us. I love that fucking job. But while we were working there, she bought an expensive Pioneer stereo. So she had one of those, back in the day, it was an 8-track. Oh no, it was a cassette. Holy cow. But back in the day, an expensive Pioneer stereo in an aftermarket car was mounted on a rack, and you could just pull it out. I guess that's the same way now. You can just pull them out. Anyway, I went and got her Pioneer stereo out of her car, brought it back to the apartment, knocked on the door. When she came to the door and looked out the curtain, I held it up in front of her. And I said, you're going to talk to me, or I'm going to smash your stereo right here on the fucking sidewalk. Oh, the way we were talking to each other, by the way, is she's the person who taught me how to speak sign language. So we could speak sign language fluently, and we used it to talk about guys that we were out with. She taught me how to speak sign language. So I was talking to her through the door in sign language, all right? And she was signing back to me through the door. And I told her, I'm going to smash this on the sidewalk if you don't come outside and talk to me. She said, okay, fine. Go wait in the car. I'll be right there. I was like, great. She's going to talk to me. So I walked out to the car and put the stereo back in and was sitting there with the door open, letting the cat play. And a cop pulls up. And I said, he said, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" I said, "Good." He said, "I understand you had a little trouble getting into your car." And I said, "Oh yeah, my friend, she told me that the guy that she came out to talk to me before she called the cops. She told me that the guy that lived there had taken her keys to work, that we couldn't leave until he got back from work." And then she went in the house and called the cops. So the cop came, and I'm sitting there. He said, "I heard you had trouble getting into your car." I thought maybe one of the neighbors had seen me break into the car, because I thought everything was cool. She was going to come out. We were going to talk, blah, blah, blah. I said, no. I had to break in because my friend took his keys to work with him, and I had my cat in the car, so I had to break in. About that time, she walked up and said, "Officer, I want you to arrest her. She broke into my car." I looked at her. I looked at the cop. I looked back at her. I looked at the cop. And I said, "Officer, I am 16 years old and a runaway, and she brought me across the state line. Bitch, you want to go? Let's fucking go." And so he took us both to jail. Where anytime we were herded into the same room together, I was trying to fucking beat the shit out of that bitch. They were having to rip me off of her because I could not believe she had called the police on me. Okay? I wanted to rip her face off. Meanwhile, all of my belongings are in her car, and he took us both to jail. And they contacted, can you picture me doing that? That's exactly what happens. I looked at her, I looked at him, I looked at her, I looked at him, and I was like, okay, bitch, let's play. I'm a minor, I'm a runaway, and she brought me across the state line, and she's refusing to bring me back. And he arrested us both. And the cops were saying to me, you know, my mom was back in Killeen, Texas, and the cops were saying to me, "What's your parents' phone number?" I told them that it was Killeen, Texas. They said, "What's your parents' phone number?" I said, "We don't have a phone." They're like, "Come on, you have a phone. What's your parents' phone number?" I said, "We don't have a telephone." Nobody doesn't have a fucking telephone. It's almost 1980. Everybody has a phone. What's your parents' phone number? We're gonna find it out. We do not have a telephone. So they had to send the local police over to my mother's house and tell her that they caught me. And then somehow, I don't know if my mother had to send money for a bus ticket or if the police paid for the bus ticket, but somehow the money was raised for me to get on a bus, and I was sent on a bus with nothing, with the clothes on my back, no money, from Denver, Colorado to Killeen, Texas in the 70s in late summer. It was freaking miserable. The bus broke down once on the way, but I'm a real chatterbox, so I was just visiting with everybody. It really wasn't that bad. But I get to my mother's house, and my mother isn't happy because evidently my father started having an affair and then ended up taking a leave of absence again. My father was famous for his leave of absences. I don't blame him for getting away from my mother. My mother, if I wasn't there for him to try to stick the family together, he wasn't staying with my mother. He wanted nothing to, my mother, when I start to tell the stories about my mother, you will understand why nobody wanted to be with her. My mother was horrible, horrible, horrible. She was mentally ill, but she was horrible. So I get off the bus in Killeen, Texas after traveling for 3 days. Our bus broke down, so I missed a connection, and I ended up having to spend the night in a bus station with nothing to eat. And then the next morning, the bus took off, but I was like a whole day late getting there, and I traveled for 3 days. I was exhausted and starving, and I get in the car with my mother, and she starts, "Oh, good, Deb, I'm glad you made it." She starts ranting at me because my dad has a girlfriend. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to leave home in the first place is because my father had stopped sleeping with my mother, and my mother had started accusing me and using me as a sounding board because she wasn't getting laid, screaming at me when, in my face, spittle spraying on me. Do you know how long it's been since your father slept with me? 2 weeks, 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there thinking, he sleeps with you? Holy shit, how the fuck does he sleep with you? She was really horrible. So as soon as I got in her car where the police sent me back, which is why I ran away in the first place, is to get away with my mother, she starts ranting and raving and screaming and yelling. Wow, Deb. I'm in the middle of story time, hon. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of story time. She starts ranting and raving and screaming at me because my father is it is awful. It really was awful. And she would do it in front of my friends. I would have my friend over. My dad would be nice to us because he wanted me to be able to have friends, because he knew that I'd never had friends the whole time I was growing up, and I didn't have siblings. And he was nice to us, and she would scream at me 2 inches away from my face without teeth in, smelling like piss because she pissed her bed and never, ever, ever changed her blankets or sheets or cleaned herself. Screaming at my face, do you know why you like your father? Because he's the man with the big dick. I was a virgin. She'd made me terrified of sex by the way that she weaponized it against everyone in the world. Everybody was fucking everybody else, And so, yeah, so that was why I didn't want to go back to my mom. She was horrible. And so she starts screaming and yelling at me about, my dad and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I get into my room, and somehow I had a joint in a bag. I don't remember how I got a joint, but somehow I had a joint. And I'm standing, she was, horribly abusive. Horribly, horribly abusive, and it was a nightmare to grow up with. That's why I'm so sensitive when people hear, I'm so sensitive when people give me a hard time about my mental instability, whatever it may be, or my triggers, because my mother was, I was shamed for her mental illness my whole life, and now you're going to shame me for mine? Get the fuck away from me, kind of thing. So she opened my bedroom door, and I was holding a bag, a paper sack. That's all of my belongings that I had was a paper sack. And she said, I dropped a joint. And she tried to push the door open and get in my room. I scooped it up and told her she was crazy that she didn't see me drop a joint. And I shoved my door shut, and she was a little thing, so she couldn't get the door open. So she went around my bedroom door and opened my bedroom window, and told me to get out of her house. So I left and walked down to the highway. It was like 11 o'clock at night, midnight. And I walked down to the payphone on the highway. Yeah, she had horrible mental illness. She had really severe mental illness. She wet the bed, but yet she didn't have any physical problems. She just liked wetting the bed. She got some kind of a kick out of wetting the bed. I don't know. She wouldn't wet the bed when she was in the hospital. So she was able to control it. That's when we started calling bullshit on her insanity, is when we'd see her go in the hospital and not wet the bed. My siblings and I remember us talking about it. She goes in the hospital, she doesn't wet the bed. Why does she wet the bed in the house? So it was really horrible. And so when she kicked me out, I walked down to the corner to use the phone in the middle of the night. She was abused as herself. She was an illegitimate child born in the 30s. I think she was the victim. I think there's a good chance she might have been a victim of incest rape. She might be the product of incest rape. At the time, though, my grandmother worked for some really wealthy people, and because the Berkshires is full of really, really wealthy people that go there for the beauty of it, because there's very little industry. So she might have had an affair. Nobody knows for sure who my mother's father was, but that was what the gist of her mental illness spurned from, is being an illegitimate child in the 30s and being mistreated by her mother's family her entire life. And a psychiatrist once told me that sometimes wetting the bed like that is a habit that they develop as a child to keep molesters out of her room. They start wetting the bed to keep the molester from wanting to come get in bed with her. Um, that's what a psychiatrist told me once. I mean, she never got help for her mental illness, so... Oh, hey, Deb. Thanks for joining. I'm glad you made it. I'm in the middle of story time. So anyway, she kicked me out. And I walked down to the highway and called my other sister, who was at this point living in Utah. I called her Collect, my sister Betty. And she said, "Don't worry, little sister. I'll take care of you." And she had her brother-in-law, her husband's brother, come in the middle of the night and pick me up. He was renting a room. He was in the Army. And he was renting a room from some people who lived in a trailer house, in a trailer court. Her husband's brother came and picked me up and took me in the middle of the night to the house where he shared a room with some people. He rented a room from some people. And I spent the next 3 days in his house, in this house where he was renting a room, so my sister could get together money and send me a plane ticket. And the only ticket that they could get was a first-class ticket at the last minute. So she got together the money in 1977. $600 back in those days was a lot. And flew me from Killeen, Texas to Utah. And that was the first time I flew, was when I was 16 years old. And my sister Betty flew me from Killeen, Texas to save me from my mother and the streets. And I got to Salt Lake City, Utah on a Saturday. And my sister picked me up at the airport, and she was so huge. She was the biggest pregnant woman I had ever seen. I mean, her belly was freaking huge. I said, "Oh my God, you're so big." She said, "I know, it's like I have a basketball." No, it's like you have a big exercise ball. So she rescued me and brought me to her house. My dad was there. My dad was there to, I think, get away from my mother and help Betty with the baby when she had it. My sister was having a really high complication pregnancy, and my dad was there to help in case she had to go in the hospital early. Tag? Anyway, so, I lost my train of thought. So I got there on a Saturday, and on a Monday, she went to the doctor to get her checkup. She was doing weekly checkups then. She was in her final month. She was ready to deliver. And when she got to the hospital, they told her, "We have to induce today. We're going to induce labor today." And it was a little one-floor hospital. She went on Monday. We drove over at 5 o'clock when my brother-in-law got off work. My dad went over with her. He drove her across the mountain. And then we found out she was staying. So when my brother-in-law got off work, we had a babysitter, and he and I drove over and saw the baby. And she had the baby, and I was there when she had the baby. And they came out of the room and said, feed her this long. I mean, she was so happy. She said, "Did you see how big he is? His foot's this big. He's going to beat up little Gary." She was so happy to have had a baby. And they wheeled her into the recovery room. And a nurse said something rude to me about, "You can't come in." And it triggered me, and I got mad at her. And so I said, "No, I'm not. Now I'm not going to go in the room," because the nurse was a little rude to me. So I went to the waiting room and let everybody else go in and visit her after she had the baby. The doctor told us, "She's so full of drugs, she's going to sleep all night long. You guys should just go ahead home, because she is so full of drugs, she's going to sleep for a while." So they went in and spoke with her after the baby was born, and then we all left and went back across the mountain, because we were living at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, and that is a military base, an installation that is closed, a closed military installation. So everybody that goes on there has to have an ID card. Anyway, they were living in base housing even though they were civilian. But you have to travel across the mountain because you're a civilian to go to the doctor, because civilians can't see military doctors. So that's what I'm talking about, go across the mountain. It was a mountain range in between the base and the civilian doctors. So we had to go back across the mountain. I went in and made dinner for everybody, and was just washing the dishes. My niece was asleep. My sister had a 3-year-old daughter and was pregnant. My niece was asleep, and I was drying up the last of the dinner dishes, and the phone call came in from the hospital saying that my brother-in-law needed to get there right away. My sister was in trouble. So my brother-in-law dropped everything and ran. I didn't think anything about it because I was used to my other sister and my dad always going in the hospital because they had chronic blood clotting issues. And so somebody going in the hospital or being in trouble in the hospital didn't really concern me because I grew up with everybody being in the hospital all the time. And so about midnight, my dad came in my room and told me, Teresa, I've got to go. I've got to go to the hospital. Betty's in trouble. I just want to let you know you're going to be taking care of Kathy, my sister's daughter. And I sat up in bed and said, okay, you know, I'll take care of Kathy in the morning. And then he paused and said, oh, Lord, I hope Betty's okay. And he left. And in the morning, when I woke up at 8 o'clock, and I sat straight up in bed and said, oh my God, I think she died. And the instant that thought came out of my head, the phone rang. And it was my dad telling me that she had to be rushed to Salt Lake City, that she hemorrhaged, that she was going to be going through a lot of surgeries, that she was really sick, blah, 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 blah. And so I had been there less than 72 hours, and my sister hemorrhaged after she had her baby. And, you know, after you have a baby, they come in the room and check on you every 15 minutes to make sure that your flow is normal. But because she was out of it and drugged, none of the nurses in that little hospital went in and checked on her for 4 hours until 9 o'clock when they called us. And she was already soaked with blood by the time they went in the room because she hemorrhaged. Her heart had stopped beating by the time they called. When they called my brother-in-law, they had revived her from her heart stopping from lack of blood because she laid there in her drug-induced stupor and bled to death. And they brought her back to life and rushed her to Salt Lake City. And a neighbor came by and picked me up and took me to Salt Lake City. And I stayed in that hospital for like 3 days, 2.5 days. And then they took me home, and I was at home alone with my niece, and they called me and told me that they'd shut the machine off, that she had passed. It was a horrific experience. It was absolutely horrific and life-changing. And that is the third or fourth or fifth life-changing event for me in 1977 at the age of 16. And I'm going to stop the story there. When I continue tomorrow, I will start with what happened after my sister died. I had to go to the hospital and pick up her belongings and the baby, and I brought him home like he was my baby. So anyway, I stopped being a wildcat after she passed away, so there's that. I stopped taking any drug that somebody put in front of me. So there is that. But we're going to stop the story time, and now we can have some chat, and then I'm going to go try to be productive. I promise I'm going to try to be productive today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. There you go. That's more to why I am the screaming bitch that I am today. Yeah, it was, that's why I was actually, when I headed to my sister's house, the plan was I have to finish school. She said, you can come here, but you can't run around and do drugs and be crazy, and you have to finish high school. No, nobody in my family sued the doctor. Because I ended up back in Utah with him taking care of the babies. And when we took the baby into the hospital for its first checkup, the doctor cried because he was so sorry that my sister died. So nobody fucking sued the hospital. And when the kids got to be 18, they could have sued. But the people that ended up raising the children were from a family of doctors, and so they discouraged my niece and nephew when they turned 18 from suing anyone. They did deserve to be sued. I had to grow up real fast. I was already grown up, though. I mean, honestly, because I had to take care of myself and rely on my own devices for almost all of my needs from a young age, I was still able to go to school and do better for myself. I really was. I really was. But I believe that the reason I was able to do all of that is because of my white privilege in the 70s. That would have been impossible for a person of color to, or next to impossible for a person of color to survive. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, that's why I'm doing story time. I think there's a good chance I won't survive this COVID pandemic, and I want to make sure to get all of this, at least the high level story. I mean, I'm not going into all of the details that I could that would make it a really interesting book, but I want to get the generality stories in. Oh, thank you, Simon. I do have Instagram, but I don't like using Mark Zuckerberg products. No, they are mad at me right now. They broke my heart a couple years ago. I'll tell that story someday, but a couple of years ago they broke my heart. And that's a story for a book. That's the extended Teresa story. I hope so. I hope that I love them with all my heart. Both of them, I love them with all my heart. And I'll always love them with all my heart. But they have made it really clear to me that they're not good people. Neither one of them. They were raised by a Christian preacher who we thought was going to give them a better life than we could because we were all so fucked up in the head. But the Christian preacher didn't raise them with the ideology that I would like to see people raised with. So Christian, that's another reason why I like to call bullshit on Christians, because they are two of the most hateful, devious, passive-aggressive people that I have ever known in my life, but they were raised with supposedly unconditional love and the love of Jesus Christ, and they are not. I love them to death still, but I will never be around them, and that feeling is mutual. They really don't want me around either, so there you go. I hope they're ready for all of my truths to come out eventually in my stories, because regardless of the fact that they have tried to destroy me to keep the truth out, I am more driven than ever. It's the most vile religion on the planet. It really is. It truly fucking is. And it is the house of the most deviant people. Yeah, organized religion is, they were Church of Christ people. The people that raised my niece ended up raising... See, because my niece and nephew ended up with my mother, and then my dad left her. And I was single and pregnant, and so we thought these church people would be good. Phone scam blew you, except I got caught. We have done a lot in common in our youth. The phone scam blew me, except you got caught. Yeah, exactly. I didn't get caught by authorities. My brother paid the bill and didn't press charges against me. I'm not even sure if he would have been able to press charges against me, because people like me is why we have crimes against that now. Backstabbing titans. And they think that the love I have for them is weird and bizarre and I shouldn't have it, and it's freaky to them, and they tell me I need therapy and blah blah blah. I mean, they are really hateful to me because I love them. And, you know, I mean, why the fuck would you act like that about me? Winston, quit digging. Good, Deb. I'm glad no charges were blocked. The bill was paid. There are good people in the church, but I don't think that the heart of the true church is. You know what, Gonzo? You were taking up 3 fucking quarters of the couch. You should see the look. You guys got to see the look on his face while I'm talking to him like this. Oh, I can't do that. I can't flip the camera. Oh, no. Oh, there it goes. Okay. That's how I flip the camera. Gonzo, you are taking up too much space on the couch. 3 quarters of the couch. Look at that. I can't even have room to put my feet up. He's really worried, isn't he? He's really concerned about the fact that I'm yelling at him. He's like, bitch, I run this house. Who are you kidding? You were in 8th grade and taught your friends how to do it. Yeah, me too. Some of the churches make me so mad because they're preachers that literally are just in it to make the money. And that's not what God's about. That's true. Right, Gonzo? Gonzo, gosh darn it, Gonzo. Anyway. All right, you guys. What else are we going to talk about? I mean, we did scams like only pay for one person to be in a hotel room, but then have 4. That kind of thing. Tell people that you're there by yourself, but sneak your friend in, you know. Oh, yeah, today is Sunday. Yes, go to church. Yes, they are in it for profit of their so-called gospel. And you do not need a book or the church to tell you how to be a good person. You need a book in the church for the forgiveness it offers. And there is no forgiveness. He can't have died for you to sin. All right, you guys, thanks for joining me. That's right. Tomorrow, I will start by telling the journey, and it might even lead into, it might end with the beating of the man at the train station. At the bus station. Too many rules made with man-made rules from religion that just benefit whatever happens to be the need of the day. And that has never been so present as it is in the Catholic Church. No, I've got 12 minutes. 12 minutes. I was just saying, tomorrow I'll start the day with talking what happened after my sister died. Big hug. Have a good day. Someday we'll all get to have a big hug. Yeah, I'll probably get off of here and tend to my dogs a little bit and then go live on TikTok. I don't like to make the TikToks be too much about just chit chat if it's a story time. So that's the reason why I'm wanting to go, is because this is story time. But I will continue with the chat over on TikTok where things aren't recorded. If you know what I mean. You guys might get me to go on a political rant that I might not want to do here. You know, I really might not want to do a political rant here. I know. Well, thank you for listening. I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. It's 40. I've been on for 50 minutes. But I will go live in a few minutes over on TikTok. I just want to use the bathroom and brush my teeth and maybe get dressed. Try to put some chores in motion, and then I'll come back. Probably half an hour. Thank you so much. Yes, I think story time is great for this. Yes, that way it can be recorded. So I love you guys, and thank you for following. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a lovely day. Stay safe, and Black Lives Matter, and we need to arrest the killers of all the black people that have happened this year. Every single one of them.
Anyway, love you guys. Talk to you later. Have a nice day.